Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Language of Music. I took a week off so I could move, and we moved. This is my new office, and I'm back at work. So it's time for us to talk about music again. I haven't forgotten that that's what we want to do during this period of forced separation from each other. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about rhythm and meter and beats. I know it's not the most glamorous part of singing, but it's the most important, is to understand the rhythm that you're singing and to understand how it's notated. So we're going to start with the concept of the time signature. It's also called a meter signature. If I were really careful, I would always say meter signature, but I tend to say time signature. It means the same thing. It's the two numbers that you see at the beginning of a piece of music, one on the top, one on the bottom, and those two numbers tell you really important things, and you should never begin to perform a piece unless you've looked at the meter signature. For instance, this is a piano piece that I grabbed, and there is a meter signature right there, and it says 3/4. 3 on top, 4 on the bottom. What does that mean? The 3, the top number, means there are 3 beats in a measure. And the bottom number, the 4, means that a quarter note gets 1 beat. In this case, the 4 at the bottom of the meter signature is like the 4 on the bottom of a fraction. A fraction with a 4 on the bottom has something to do with quarters. A time signature, a meter signature with a 4 on the bottom has something to do with quarters, quarter notes in this case. So if there's a 3 on the top and a 4 on the bottom, it means that there are 3 beats in the measure and the quarter note gets 1 beat. It's really hard to remember that second one. The bottom number tells you what kind of note gets 1 beat. So how many quarter notes could there be in a measure of 3/4? Well, there could be 3 quarter notes in a measure, and typically are. A 3/4 time signature is very common. It's a waltz, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm counting quarter notes. Now that doesn't mean that they all have to be quarter notes. It could be 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and. It could be, I'm going to go into ba ba ba. It could be ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. But every one of the measures had 3 beats in it. So you can subdivide a note. If you have quarter notes, you could subdivide them into 2/8 notes each, or 4/16 notes each. You could also put 2 quarter notes together to make 1 long note. That would be a half note. You could put 3 quarter notes together to make 1 long note. That would be a dotted half note. You could dot the quarter note. So you have a dotted quarter note followed by an 8th note, followed by another quarter note, which would be ba, 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 ba. Remember, the dot lengthens the note by half of itself. So you could make 1.5 plus 1/2 plus 1 equals 3. This is all simple mathematics. But when you look at a line of notes, you really need to know, what is the meter signature? How many beats does a particular note get? And this will tell you, this time signature will tell you how many beats in a measure, that's the top number, what kind of note gets 1 beat. Another way of putting that, let me just read what I wrote down. The top number tells you how many of a specified note it takes to fill a measure. And the bottom number tells you what that specified note is. So if you have 3/4, it takes 3 quarter notes to fill a measure. If you have 2/4, it takes 2 quarter notes to fill a measure. If you have 4/8, it takes 4/8 notes to fill the measure. If you have 6/2, it takes 6 half notes to fill a measure. Ask yourself, what kind of note and how many of them fill a measure? So for instance, you could have 4/4. That's 4 beats in a measure and the quarter note gets 1 beat. That is the most common meter signature and is often abbreviated with just a big C, which stands for common time, because it's such a common time signature. You could have 3/4. You could have 2/4, which would be 2 beats in a measure, quarter note gets 1 beat. You could have 6/4, 6 beats in a measure, quarter note gets 1 beat. You can have uneven kinds of rhythms like 7/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Needless to say, that's not a really common one. Now we could have half notes. Half notes could be the unit. Half notes could be the specified note. So if you have 3/2, it means there are 3 beats in a measure and the half note gets 1 beat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm counting half notes. You could have 4/2. 1, 2, 3, 4, but each of those is a half note. We're more used to seeing it as quarter notes, but a composer can choose half notes. It could be an eighth note that is the specified type of beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm counting 6/8, 6 beats in a measure, and the eighth note gets 1 beat. So there are 6/8 notes, or the equivalent of 6/8 notes in a measure. But it could be 1 and 2, 3, 1, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 3, I should say 4, 5 and 6, 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5 and 6 and. You can take those notes and subdivide them so you can have interesting, complicated, complex rhythms, but still be able to count to whatever the number is. And you need to know, as a singer, how many beats are in a measure, where do I come in, where do I go out, where do I have a rest, on what beat. It's really important that you know that. So you have a class practice sheet that looks like this. You can ignore this bottom part. But up here, you've got some lines of music and there's no meter signature written in. You should be able to figure out by looking at several measures, how many of what kind of note fill a measure. No two measures are the same. So you need to look and write in over here what you think the proper meter signature is. I always recommend that you do these things in pencil and erase them, and then 3 or 4 days later do them again, so that you really are sure you understand. All 4 of these are different. You have to ask yourself, what kind of note gets 1 beat and how many can fill a measure? And then you write the appropriate numbers. So let's do the first one together. You have a quarter note and 2 eighth notes in this measure. You have a dotted quarter note and an eighth note in this measure. You have 4 eighth notes in this measure, and you have a half note in the last measure. So if there's a half note in the last measure, it's either going to be 1/2, or it's going to be 2/4. I'm sorry, 2/2. So if there's a half note, if that fills a measure, if a half note fills a measure, then you can assume that it's either the half note that gets counted or the quarter note that gets counted. Let's assume it's a quarter note because it is much more common than half. So how many quarter notes can fill the same measure? 2. So the answer would be 2/2. 2 half notes per measure. So here you would write a 2 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. See if you can figure out the rest of them. If you have trouble and you have a question, feel free to email me. My email hasn't changed. Now, the other homework assignment, which I know you are just going to love, is clapping. Counting and clapping. Now, the way to do that, start at the top. And you've got the meter signature, tells you how many beats to measure, what kind of note gets 1 beat. And then you have all these notes. Now, what I think you should do is to take a pencil and write the counts under the notes. So this first measure has a quarter note and 3 eighth notes, but they're written as a triplet. A triplet means they all fill the space of 2 eighth notes. 3 eighth notes filling the space that is usually held by 2 eighth notes. So that means you've got a quarter note and 2 eighth notes. And it's 2/4 time. So you wouldn't count 1, 2. you would count 1, 2 enda, 1 triplet, da, 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 da. The second measure has 2 eighth notes and an eighth note and an eighth rest. So if this is your quarter note, 1, 2 enda, then the second measure is, sorry, I forgot what it was, 1 and 2 and. I raised my hand so that I'd know it was a rest. Ba, ba, ba. 1 and 2. The third measure has 2 16th notes and an eighth note, and they're beamed together. That's like the equivalent of 2 eighth notes, but the first beat is subdivided again. So we have ba, ba, ba. Then we have another triplet, ba, ba, ba. Then we have the last measure, ba, 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 ba. 1, 2, remember your quarter note. So I'm going to count that one for you. It goes 1 and a 2 and a, no it doesn't, that's wrong. 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. So the whole thing would be 1, 2 and 1 and 2. 1 and a 2 and 1 and a 2. And I would write what I just said, the words that I said, 1 and a 2, I would write them under the appropriate note. The triplets were kind of mean to throw in there. But triplets are very much a part of music, so when you see them, you have to go ba, ba, ba. You have to think of them as being stretched, like they were going through molasses. Counting and clapping. Now, the reason that you need to know this is because if you're singing on the first beat of the measure, it's usually the stressed beat. What does that mean? Well, if we have 4 beats in a measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, because of the way human beings are built with our 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes and 2 ears, we have a sort of a binary existence. And we think of ourselves as 1, 2, 1, 2. We often think of ourselves or think of our lives in terms of 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. That means we emphasize 1 and we emphasize 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 and 3 get more stress usually than 2 and 4. 2 and 4, in fact, are called the off beats. So if I'm conducting you, I'll use a pencil. If I'm conducting you, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. The first gesture, the gesture that goes with the first beat of the measure, is a downward gesture. It's the strongest gesture I have. And you see it, even out of the corner of your eye, you see me go, boom. You see me having a strong gesture, and that gives you the idea, the correct idea that we're on beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're looking for something fun to do, grab a pencil and join me. However, this is mirror image. You have to go across your body on 2, 3, 4. So this is down and to the left and to the right and up. Down to the left, right, and up. Downbeat is what that's called. And this is called upbeat. Downbeat, upbeat. Clever names for gestures. Down and up. There is always a downbeat. Every measure has a downbeat. Every measure has at least 1 beat in it. There is virtually always an upbeat that goes with it. It is possible to have measures with only 1 beat, but so rare that it's not even worth talking about. So there's usually at least 2 beats, which means there's at least a down and an up and a down and an up. But often there's more than that in between. But you need to know whether you're singing on the first beat of the measure, the downbeat, the strong beat, or whether you're singing on the off beat. Whether the 3 is as strong as the 1, it has to do very often with the text. We are singers after all. And what we're doing is singing words. And what composers are doing is setting words to music and trying to make them make sense rhythmically. So you take the words and you try to make them make sense with the rhythm that you write. So the strong notes, the strong beats happen with the strong syllables of the words. They try to match it up as much as they can. So you have a couple of things you need to think about. You need to think about how many beats there are in a measure. You need to think about what kind of note is getting 1 beat. What kind of note are we counting? What kind of note is Beth conducting? And sometimes I'll tell you, I'm doing this in 4, I'm doing this in 2, and then you'll know how I'm looking at the rhythm. But usually what I'm doing matches the time signature. Every now and then I depart from the time signature, but not very often. Most of the time I do what the meter signature says. If it says it's in 3, I conduct 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If it says it's in 2, I conduct 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If it says it's in 6, I conduct 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's your first conducting lesson. You can take over my job anytime I get sick. But not until, please, because I still want my job. I really, really do. I miss you guys so much. I miss singing together. I miss the sounds you make. I miss the jokes you make. I even miss the mistakes you make because even that's fun. The whole thing is fun. And until they let us sing together again, let's find other ways to make music. Let's find other ways to sing together or to listen to music, to sing by ourselves, to listen to each other on YouTube, on the virtual choirs that are coming out are quite amazing and require technology way beyond our capability. But it is wonderful to watch that and to enjoy it and to appreciate it and to understand what went into it because you do. Um, and let's just dream about when we get together and all the wonderful things we're going to do and the sounds we're going to make. In the meantime, I expect you'll be able to count rhythms just great, like a pro. So give yourself some time to do some homework and let me know if you're having trouble. And I'll see you again on Thursday. Bye. Have a great day.